Good evening, class. Don't forget, whisk. Watch. Now it's time to watch the video. We're going to be talking about adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators. Let's look at our first fraction. 2/4 plus 1/4 equals. Well, in order to add fractions, we need to make sure we have common denominators. And a common denominator is when two fractions have the same denominator. So if we look at our fractions here, we have 2/4 and 1/4. So our common denominator is 4. Let's look at what this looks like drawn out. We have a picture of 2/4 plus 1/4. So if we add those together, we end up with 3/4. So 2/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Notice that our denominator stays the same. It never changes. And what we do is we simply add the numerators to get the new numerator. Now let's look at a subtraction problem. We have 7/10 minus 4/10 equals. Well, our problem already has common denominators, so we can draw our picture. 7/10 minus 4/10. That's going to leave us with 3/10 left. So we write 3/10. Let's look at another problem. Ben mixes 1 1/4 cup of juice concentrate with 1 2/4 cup of water. How much total juice does Ben have when he is finished? So, our number, we are going to add 1 1/4 plus 1 2/4. Now, when we're talking about fractions, it is easier to add and subtract fractions if we change them from a horizontal problem to a vertical problem. Let's draw it out. We have 1 whole plus 1/4 to give us 1 1/4. Our next fraction or mixed number is 1 2/4. So let's see how we do this. First, it's easy. Let's add our whole numbers together. We have 2 whole squares. Now let's take our fractions and add them together. Our denominators are the same, so we can add them. And we end up with 3/4. So our answer is 2 3/4. But we aren't finished. It is a story problem. So it is 2 3/4 cups. Let's look at another problem. There were 2½ chicken pot pies in the refrigerator. Bob ate 1½ chicken pot pies. Bob must have been pretty hungry. How many pot pies are left in the refrigerator? Well, so we have 2½ to start out with. Bob's going to eat 1½. So how much is left? Let's draw this out. Bob eats 1 whole and 1/2. So how many are we left with? That's right. We are left with 1 whole. And we shouldn't forget our label. And we're left with the label pot pies. So there were 2½ chicken pot pies in the refrigerator. Bob ate 1½ pot pies. How many pot pies were left in the refrigerator? 1. Okay, our next problem. Bob estimates that it will take him 2½ hours to finish reading a book and 1½ hours to write his book report. About how long will it take Bob to finish his homework? Well, this is an addition problem. So we have 2½ hours to read plus 1½ hours to write the book report. Let's look at what this looks like in pictures. So we have 2.5 plus 1.5, and that's going to give us 3 2/2. Well, 3 2/2, that looks the same as, looks like I have 4 whole circles there. So 3 2/2 is the same as 4. And don't forget the label, which is hours. Now it is your turn. Solve each equation. You may use your fraction pieces to help you solve these problems. Pause the video while you solve these problems. Check your answers against the answers I have here. Make sure that you have the correct answers. See you in class. Now that you've watched the video, it's time for our summary. And our summary statement is, in your own words, explain how to add and subtract fractions with like denominators. Explain how to add and subtract mixed numbers with like denominators. Question. Write one question about adding and subtracting fractions and mixed numbers. This could be a question you might know the answer to, or it could be one you don't know the answer to. See you in class.